I'm tired.
The Late Morning Program with Nam Ras Podcast.
Right now, it's like this is so wild because like we don't usually do this.
We don't do this.
I think
hour and a half. That's
hour
it.
and a half, 2 hours maybe, and then we're like, okay, like, and this is just like it's churning. We just want to hear more and more, and kind of can't help but feel like we're like not even scratching the surface in some ways.
This is the Anchalila.
This is the
Anchalila.
Yeah.
Okay. So we are in July of 1977, I think.
In London.
We're in London.
Yeah.
No, it's not July. It's September.
Oh, okay.
September. Okay.
Okay.
August, September. I have to look it up. When we were in London.
Right.
Sorry, I don't keep that kind of date sequence, but I can give you exact dates because it's day by day entered in my diary.
Right.
But most devotees know, Satsrup Maharaj has documented the date sequencing quite accurately. Right. So,
by the way, but you're not in the Lilamrita, right?
No,
well, I'm a little bit in there, but
okay.
I mean, yeah, we were heavily edited out if we weren't part of the 11 zonal acharyas, to be very frank.
You told me about that yesterday. That's why I said that.
Oh,
It was a promotion besides Prabhupada. There was some other agendas there to because they believed that they were doing the right thing. I don't know how they concluded that, but they did. And
a lot of untold stories, a lot of untold
to
silence.
solidify the faith in devotees in the 11 zonal acharyas, which turned out to be a farce, unfortunately. But that was the mood when he was writing that book. It's there, and so there are things that I'm not there, but I was there.
And there are people who were written that they were there, but they weren't there.
But they weren't there.
Can you believe that?
That's wild.
That's why
wild.
Jamuna, she refused to read the Lilamrita. She read some parts where she had been cut out, and she was so offended. She said, I don't want to read this book. Right. But I will say, it is basically accurate. It's a good book, especially for the new generations. It's a very good document. I shouldn't give the wrong impression.
Sure.
But there are some small inaccuracies.
Of course, yeah.
And I'm only guessing at the reasons, Might have just been errors.
Right.
Innocent errors. I don't know. How do I know?
Can we briefly talk about Srila Prabhupada's situation there at the hospital in London?
Okay.
Without much detail because of just time constraint here. I want to...
So at one point, Prabhupada's health was deteriorating, and he was having a certain problem with passing water. And I had noticed it and questioned him and asked, how long has that been? And he said, maybe a few days, some blockage. He said, some blockage. So I called around and I got to speak to the head of, he was either the chairman or the president of the Royal Herbological Society, right? And who he was actually treating and advising the Queen. The time he was that high up in herbological medicine, right? And I explained Prabhupada's condition, and he very kindly on the phone gave me some very quick advice. He said, first of all, it's too late for herbal medicine from what you described. Obviously, his condition requires what he called heroic intervention, meaning allopathic medicine, meaning that I need to take him to the hospital.
Right.
And he said that if you don't, in this condition, he will soon slip into a coma because I knew that I understood Prabhupada's uric acid was getting high in his stomach. He was getting nausea. He couldn't eat. And this is a result of kidney failure, which eventually was clearly described by Dr. McIrving at Watford General. I think at one time it was called Peace Memorial, but it's called Watford General. It's what is now Watford General Hospital.
Yeah.
Okay, so the herbological doctor said, he should go to a hospital or he may slip into a coma. And if he does in that condition that you describe, he'll never come out of the coma. You'll lose him. So I went in and I explained to Prabhupada what I had heard. And Prabhupada immediately said, call Tamal. We're immediately going to Vrindavan today. Because he took it as a prediction of his death.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that he thought, oh my God, what do I go to call a doctor? He just, no, okay, let's go to Vrindavan. And during this time, he started to say to me on a regular basis, and he said it specifically to me numerous times. He would look at me, he would put his hand on my arm to stop me from whatever I was doing. Listen.
Yeah.
Whatever happens, my death must be glorious. Do you understand? And yes, Prabhupada.
How did you understand that?
My death must be glorious?
Yeah.
I don't know if I knew what it meant in all of its features. I just understood he was saying it, and I had to try to figure it out as we went along what that would mean. And then he would also say one other thing. Whatever happens, no tubes or pipes. And it was like an order. And he followed up again. Do you understand? I said, yes, Prabhupada. No tubes and pipes. And he kept saying it to me. So now, Prabhupada is getting ill. He has to go to hospital. He's ordering me no tubes or pipes. I'm in a real pickle. How am I going to deal with this? So I'd gone to Prabhupada. I told him the condition. He says, call Tamal, we're going to Vrindavan. And I did not move. I stood there. And I said, Srila Prabhupada, you have told me a number of times that your death must be glorious. And he stopped and looked at me. I said, I cannot assure you that the stress of travel, you may not expire on the plane. And then I think he realized that was possibly true. And you could see he visibly kind of sunk a little deeper in the bed and sighed, and like he was confronted with something that was a harsh reality.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he said, what to do? Like he was at a loss for the moment, what to do. I said, Srila Prabhupada, let me take you to hospital. I promise you there will be no tubes or pipes. Just some plumbing work in your urinary tract, just some plumbing work. It'll be just local anesthetic, I promise you. I didn't know how I made that promise, because no hospital will do that. Right? The person that's in such a condition, he was, as he used to say, I'm just a bag of bones. He was already describing himself as skin and bones. Right? Probably he weighed about 85 pounds, the hospital estimated when they brought him in.
Wow.
Yeah, like almost nothing. He was just, I could carry him like a 12-year-old child, that much weight, my arms, 10 or 12-year-old child. So I said that to him, probably, let me take you to hospital. And then he just said, okay. Like, what else can I do? He felt trapped, and I wasn't trying to trap him. I just was trying to inform him.
It's a difficult situation, yeah.
You might expire on the plane. He was so fragile. That's not what he wanted. At least in London, he would expire with devotees around him. It would have been glorious. Or let's get better, and you can go to Vrindavan then.
Right.
Yeah.
That was what I was thinking, and he expected me to advise. Like I told you earlier, when I said, I'm not sure you want to know my opinion because I have a different. And he yelled at me. He said, "Why I'm asking." Right? So I was supposed to advise. Otherwise, what's the meaning of calling me nurse? Yeah. Which he was calling me then. So then when he accepted, I went out of the room gently and said, let me arrange. And as soon as I closed the bedroom door, I started running and yelling, Tamal, Prabhupada's agreed to go to hospital. And Tamal immediately started, ambulance, organizing, and then I went gently back in the room. Said, Srila Prabhupada, one thing the herbal doctor had advised is that before you go to hospital, maybe a warm bath might help relieve the swelling, and you can pass some water. So we prepared a bath for Prabhupada, and Upendra and I carried Prabhupada under the armpits, and I had that in the manner, that old lion claw bathtub there.
Yeah, it's still there, right?
And I had drawn the water, and I had Upendra hold Prabhupada, and I kneeled down by the tub. I stopped holding him. Pendra was holding under both armpits. And I was testing the water and adjusting it on my wrists like you do with a baby, you know, because he had a very specific temperature range that he wanted. And suddenly Upendra called out, Abhiram, catch him! And I looked up from kneeling down. Prabhupada had gone into a full mall seizure. His hands were locked like this. His eyes were up in the top of his head. His jaw was locked. And his knees were collapsing down. And Pendra could not hold him anymore. He was literally sinking down. And I thought, oh my God, this is it. I thought, this is it. He wasn't breathing. He was locked.
That had never happened before.
Oh, no. So I just scooped my left hand under his legs, under his knees, my right arm under his shoulder. I scooped him up in my arms, and he was locked. Upendra was frozen, and I put my face in Upendra's face, and I yelled, "Get Tamal!" Because Tamal was, one of the managing people, an important person in our group. And he had a good brain. Obviously, he needed to be known also. And Upendra scurried, ran out, and I ran into the bedroom and put Prabhupada out on the bed. And I took the butts of my hands. And I had no training in this. I don't know where it came from. I put in his solar plexus, Prabhupada's solar plexus, and I jabbed like this. And he went, started breathing, and his muscles relaxed, and his eyes started rolling in his head a little, and he came, to awareness of his body. And then, so it was kind of traumatic for me. And so, So then, a lot of little details, but the gurney came, the ambulance came, and they came upstairs and grabbed the sheets and switched him over to the gurney, 6 straps, strapped him in, took him down the steps. The devotees were all crying, watching him go. We got in the ambulance. We all climbed in the ambulance with, the ambulance drivers were protesting, and Guru Kripa just said, it's our guru. And they said, okay. Guru Kripa was there, of course. And we went to the hospital, and they took us in a small observatory room. And Dr. McIrving came in. He was the senior surgeon, probably 62, 63 years old. Scottish, 6'3", handsome Scottish man with a beautiful Scottish brogue, that rolling rumble. That's just so beautiful to hear, like Sean Connery or something, And Prabhupada had this image of that Scottish gentleman.
Prabhupada's teachers were
Scottish Church's
right?
College,
Yeah.
And he liked a gentleman, he liked that quality of gentlemanliness. And the man was a man's man. He was a beautiful man. And he was chosen by Krishna to be there. I know that for sure. Just so many good qualities he had, And he was so respectful to Prabhupada and treated him with such dignity. And so there was a little adjustment trying to be made, but basically the doctor concluded that, we have to do surgery to relieve this, because it's swelling, right? And we have to, it's blocked his urinary tract. We have to do surgery. So, the Guru Kripa and Tamal, and they said, Prabhupada doesn't want, we're not going to do tubes and pipes, he can't be. And the doctor said, but he's in such a condition, he can't go in surgery without life support. It's not done. It's even probably illegal, to do that, right? So doctor very politely, but he said, all right, well, you all decide what you want to do. Let me know. And he went out of the room, and Tamal looks at me. He said, Abhiram, you got the silver tongue. You got to talk this doctor into surgery without tubes and pipes. It's another impossible mission, So, okay, I went out of the room. I went down the hall, and I found him sitting in a side office doing his reports like doctors do. And I said, Dr. McIrving, may I speak with you? He said, certainly. He came out. You know, I'm looking up at him. I'm 6'1", and I'm looking up at him, you know. And I said, Dr. McIrving, what do you see? He said, what I see is that he has, from birth, congenitally, he used the word congenitally, small urethra, the urinary tract. And he said he has diabetes and subsequently dropsy, swelling type of symptoms. And he said, I imagine he's had diabetes for a long time. And kind of questioning, I said, as long as we've known him, 10 years at least. We know it may have been before, but he's had at least 10 years of diabetes, right? And of course, in India, it's a very common ailment with Indian bodies for different reasons. So he said, and what's happened is that when the swelling comes to pass water, he has to push because this pushing has caused back pressure on his kidneys, which has eventually caused renal damage. This is all in my notes, written that day. So no matter what devotees say, they talked to McIrving long after he was retired, 30 years later or something, and he said he didn't remember a lot of it, but this is what I wrote that day. And then I said, Dr. McIrving, if we submit completely to everything you can do, how much time can you give him? Not the favorite question of a doctor. The doctor doesn't want to hear that kind of question. Yeah. And never wants to answer that kind of question. But this was a real gentleman. And he was there for a special reason. He was, like I said, he had been an army surgeon. You know, he'd been in war. He'd held the boys in his arms as they died. You know, he was a man's man. He was a real person, you know. And he felt things. And I put it right to him. I said, how much time could you give him? And he said, he went like maybe 3-4 months. Wow. So I looked at him. I said, Dr. McIrving, he doesn't want 3 or 4 months. He just wants to go home. I was silent. He just wants to go home. McIrving closed his eyes for a moment. He said, all right, I'll do it. He did it. Operated without tubes and pipes. He gave local anesthesia. Opened up the flow. Prabhupada could live a little longer. So the next day, it was an outpatient operation. Prabhupada was back at the manor that day, and I had been instructed how to care for the cuts of the surgery, wound. But Prabhupada never got infected. I never saw anything. Nothing ever smelled bad. Nothing was ever infected. Prabhupada was an amazing in every way. His skin was so soft. I never felt, I had babies. I've massaged my son from when he was a little lizard, every day, and oiled him up in the sun, and I know what babies feel like, Prabhupada's skin was beyond that. It was just amazing. So soft, and, so everything about it was so pleasing. So the next day, there was supposed to be a follow-up check from the hospital by a nurse. Naturally, he was outpatient. He just had a surgery. He was in bad shape. She has to make a report, see how he is. So I told Prabhupada, the nurse is going to come to check on you. Prabhupada said, no. I said, no, what, Prabhupada? He said, you do not change the horse in the middle of the river. He said, you tell Dr. McIrving to come. I said, but he's the head surgeon, Prabhupada. He said, no, you ask him. I said, okay. So I called Dr. McIrving, and he immediately said, of course I'll come. Of course I'll come, he said. And he came. And when he came, and he was standing over Prabhupada's bed, and checking him, Prabhupada looked up like a little child, and he said, you have saved my life. Thank you very much. So loving, and I mean, this man was like sent from somewhere to treat Prabhupada with such dignity and care, Nobody would have done that. No doctor cared about his career. He could have been sacked for it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What if Prabhupada died on the operating table? And they found out he didn't need to do proper life support. Didn't even have an IV, what do you call the saline solution. Not even the saline solution, which helps the body avoid shock.
Right.
He'd been in a real pickle. His whole career could have been, overshadowed by that.
Yeah, yeah.
Or we could have gone and sued him or something. It could have been a real, but what he did for Prabhupada. People knew who he was instinctively. I go back, flashback, many years back. I was walking at Henry Street Temple in New York with Prabhupada. A few other devotees were there. We were walking into that warehouse area where the BBT used to be, really bad area. And as we were coming along the street towards the BBT, there was like a stoop, we call it. And 3 homeless men were sitting there. Obviously, they'd been there all night. And they were, down on their luck, and they were sitting there. And as Prabhupada came along, walking like, King Indra or something, with that dignity and his chin slightly up and the cane, these men saw him suddenly, all 3 of them, as if someone had grabbed them by the back of the neck. They immediately stood up at attention. Yeah, all at the same time, like soldiers.
Wow.
At attention. As Prabhupada walked by, and they all nodded their head in respect. And Prabhupada, Hare Krishna, walked right by. And this was common when you were around Prabhupada. People knew something going on here. There's somebody special here.
Yeah.
You could just see it.
They talk about demanding respect and commanding respect.
He just
commanded it.
The gods were singing about the glories of Prabhupada, and maybe some people could feel it, could understand something's going on here. It's a special person. It really was like that. And so Dr. McIrving played his part.
Yeah. When Dr. McIrving said, kind of, I'm paraphrasing, but best case scenario, we're talking about, what did he say, 3 or 4 months? Had that reality sunk in by then?
Oh, absolutely. That's why Prabhupada had said, let's immediately go to Vrindavan.
But to you specifically,
Yeah. It was Prabhupada's departure was clearly a fait accompli. We, of course, hoped against hope, and we really did at times think maybe there's hope, maybe that we're constantly looking for that hope.
Yeah.
But there was a continuous, deterioration. And there were, of course, as there is in any, I hospiced my mother for a couple of years, and I observed this also. And, there are times when they...
Right, there are ebbs and flows, ups and downs.
Yeah, there's ebbs and flows.
But you were under no illusions that Prabhupada was going to be with you all for very much longer.
It was pretty clear. We had hoped we could squeeze another year out, or some miracle came along or something, but it wasn't very realistic.
So we should move forward to quickly through Bombay.
So right after that operation, we moved to, a couple days later, we flew out.
Yeah.
And now we flew on, because the London devotees had arranged it, we flew in business class. It was first or business, but I remember we got on board, and there were male stewards, and it was all very nice. And Prabhupada said, he was talking about the British, he said, an elephant, dead or alive, is worth a lakh of rupees. So he's saying, even though the British Empire is dead, it's still worth a lakh of rupees. It still had some value. Because they treated him with so much dignity and respect from the moment he landed.
Yeah.
I'm talking government officials, airplane officials, the pilots, everyone, Dr. McIrving. They treated him with so much respect and dignity that he just felt so welcomed and so honored,
Yeah.
He was very pleased with that. So now we've turned back. We couldn't go on to America.
Right. So by that point, it's clear you have to go back.
That was the point. You asked that question. Did we know that he was? Of course, that's why we turned back.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to get back to Vrindavan because he knew it was coming to the end.
Yeah.
So we flew to Bombay, and a number of things happened. But I'll just remember one anecdote. I was cleaning him. He was in my arms, and I bathed him a couple times a day, changed his kopans and his cloth, and every day we put twice a day fresh iron silks with the gold buttons. He was Jagadguru, we dressed him as Jagadguru. It wasn't like lounging around in his pajamas or something. All the sheets, all the bedding, everything crisp, clean, pressed,
Yeah.
We tried to take good care of him.
Yeah.
And honor him. So I was bathing him. His head was resting in my arm here, and I was cleaning his lower parts of his body. And I, as a nurse, didn't want to make him feel uncomfortable, so I was just ignoring him, bathing him like it was my own body, so he didn't feel,
Right. Self-conscious.
Self-conscious.
Yeah.
To treat him with dignity, I could never treat him with enough dignity, what he deserved, but I tried my best. So in that cleaning, he was watching me, and he said, in the middle of it, he said, "It is a nasty business." And I said, No, Prabhupada. He said, "You don't mind?" So somehow it flashed in my brain that this person is so dignified. If he thought that he was a burden, he would go in a second. He would just go. He was not going to be, demoted to pathetic. And so instead of debating, I just thought what to say. And I said, "Srila Prabhupada, if you don't let me serve you, I will serve Maya." He kind of looked up in the air and he said, "That is true."
Couldn't argue with that.
He had me pegged. He knew right away.
I was saying yesterday to Prabhu, that's such a good answer. That's such a great answer.
Yeah. That's so clever.
How can you argue with that?
You can't argue with that, right? Yeah. It's like, he's like, "Oh, you got a point there. Okay. Carry on."
Right.
Wow.
That's so sweet. And yeah.
So that was in Bombay that happened. And then
but Bombay was was always known to be like a pit stop. It wasn't.
Well, no, he wanted to stay until the temple was done.
I see.
But two things were happening simultaneously. One, his health just was continuing to deteriorate. And the other is it was clear that temple was not going to open for 6 months to a year.
Right.
And there's no way he could wait. He thought he could. He thought he could first try to encourage it. Maybe his health would pick up being back in Bombay. He just was hoping. But then he gave up that hope.
Yeah.
And so now we have to go now to Vrindavan. So I was again dispatched to get the train, like I did at Kumbh Mela, from the same man, R.N. Gupta. And he arranged a Maharaja's bogie, all mahogany lined, central air conditioned, living room, kitchen, 2 bedrooms, a traveling caravan on track.
Yeah.
And I had it all set up to take Prabhupada. So I called the office. I won't disclose who answered the phone, one of the leaders. And I said, "I've got this all arranged. It's 50,000 rupees. And they said, "Oh, we don't have 50,000 rupees. The worldwide movement in the big peak of book distribution, they're building a big temple. They didn't have 50,000 rupees for Prabhupada's coach." It wasn't Tamal. It was somebody in the administration in Bombay at the time. Mm. And they said, "Well, you pay for it, Abhirama." I said, "I've been in India for 3 years. I owe my brother-in-law money. I have no money, right? If I had money, I would have immediately paid for it, That was a lot of money in those days.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. You could say maybe like, I don't know, $8,000 or $10,000 or something. It was a lot of money. I mean, it would have had a big impact.
Yeah.
But no, they didn't have it. And they said, anyway, Prabhupada doesn't like AC. So just book him on non-AC, second class. Okay, so I juggled all the things and felt really bad about it. And it was still hot summer, So when I carried Prabhupada into that train and laid him on his bunk, those hard vinyl bunks, I put him on my own shutter down underneath him because it wasn't clean. We didn't get sheets in those days.
Yeah.
And then I sat down on the dirty floor so that I could hold his hand my cross-legged on the floor, leaning on his bunk. And the first thing he said to me is, "Where is the AC?"
Oh.
So now we're back in India, right? This is India again.
Oh.
Yeah. We're back in that same old...
I mean, it's one thing, like, if he had just asked that, but knowing what had been arranged.
I knew the background.
Knowing that whole backstory, and then to hear that, it was just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And that in those days, when you have the windows open, and those were all steam engines, coal-fired steam engines. So when you turn a corner, that smoke comes pouring in your window. And we had soot, black soot on us, from that train ride back to Vrindavan.
Gosh.
So when we got there, we carried Prabhupada into his room, and he said, "Now I am home." And we knew that was the beginning of the final Anchalila. So we're back in Vrindavan. One night, I've never told this story publicly, but maybe this is some time, I don't know how long I'll be around. And I'm sure most people will say Abhiram's a sahaja, crazy, don't believe anything he said, and that's fine. I deserve whatever comes to me. I was attending Prabhupada in the evening in his room. I was there. Prabhupada was lying in his bed. It was about 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning. You wouldn't know it today because we don't have peacocks, hardly any left. In those days, there were so many peacocks. It was like a aviary. There were so many peacocks. And there was a time in the night, it was a very mystical moment that always happened about 2 or something in the morning. Like dogs, one will start barking and another one on the other side of town, and they'll all start a cacophony of sounds. The peacocks did that. So they would, the whole Vrindavan lit up with peacocks singing. And Bhagaji had told me that they're calling a name of Sri Radha. They're calling Sri Radha. Right? Prabhupada's friend Bhagaji. So this happened, and it was like this moment of another dimension was happening, and Prabhupada was lying in his bed with his eyes closed, and he did this. Oh, 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 oh. He was responding to the peacocks with this crying, this deep longing crying, this. And the whole room became thick. And I looked up on the wall of that picture of Krishna and Balaram, where this very cheeky little, his arm was up on this other shoulder, right? And that painting was not two-dimensional. It was alive. It was Krishna and Balaram. Now, all I can say is Rupa Goswami describes shadow attachment, that when you're in the proximity of someone in another dimension, I'm paraphrasing, that you may feel that, you may get that effect. It's called shadow attachment. It's in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu.
Right.
And that's all I can say. But the problem I have with this experience is that there's no way I can ever leave. I'm stuck now because I saw that.
Right.
I saw,
even if you want to, you can't.
I saw where Prabhupada was always living. He had never left.
Yeah.
It's not like, we have so many godbrothers who are maybe glorious sadhana siddhas. Prabhupada had never left. He was always in Vrindavan.
There was a picture of the deities of Krishna and Balaram?
No, it's a
The
painting.
painting.
It's there
Painting.
today.
Oh, I see.
It's there today.
Same or similar kind of that.
Right.
Hand on the
same,
shoulder.
same stance
Same
as
stance, yeah.
Krishna and Balaram. So again, I know I'll be condemned for saying that. But maybe there'll be a few devotees who will be inspired. I'll be willing to take my kicks and criticisms for those devotees. That is my testimony. Nothing to gain. I'm not looking for position. I'm very happy to be outside the institution. I don't take the salt from the institution. I don't aspire for any position in the devotees community. I just want to testify to Prabhupada's glory. Prabhupada asked me, my death must be glorious. And his death was glorious.
So I wanted to ask you, because seen from a certain angle, there's like a kind of, I don't want to say paradox, because I don't think they're actually, but a seeming sort of, on the one hand, Prabhupada was always home in Vrindavan and this kind of mystical side. And then on the other hand, seemingly the other hand, but feel free to push back if you don't think there's any kind of disconnect here. But one might say, on the other hand, you're caring for someone probably at their most sort of physically vulnerable, weakest, we might say, if we want to use words like that, right? How do you sort of reconcile or hold those two things?
Well, one thing, and this is really important, what you brought up, and I've seen that devotees who weren't there,
yes,
who get on podcasts and
platforms
publicly
and
tell how it was. And when I listen to them, I'm thinking, wow, you really weren't there. Like, you were really not there. Even third party, fourth party, you really weren't there.
Yeah.
Like, you just have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Number one, Prabhupada was super conscious. He never was unaware of what was going on around him. He knew what everyone was thinking. And he was in control. He was never vulnerable. Prabhupada raised his eyebrow from that bed, and our knees were shaking. I mean, he had so much regard and respect. And, I saw Tamal reduced to tears if he made an error, and probably like this whole key issue, when he had so long wanted to be trusted with the key to the Elmira, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, everything went in the Elmira. There was another issue. Somebody was said online, I never put anything in the Elmira. I don't know why medicine should go in the Elmira. Everything went in the Elmira.
So that key was...
And I mean, every little thing went in the Elmira. Prabhupada was so meticulous. His pens went in the Elmira. His ink pens. And that medicine that they're talking about had gold in it. It went in the Elmira, right? So Tamal got that, and then he lost the key, and he was just devastated. I mean, he was crying. You didn't want to disappoint Prabhupada in any way. So he was very powerfully in control, right?
Yeah.
All through. We were just, our breath was coming from him.
Yeah.
So he wasn't vulnerable in the ways you might think. He controlled us with our love, and who he was, the power of his presence, and it was.
Right.
So, where should I go here?
You were saying how no one there who was there at the time, and now there are only two of you now still left who are there in those last days.
So I would say, when I'm saying only me and Pradumna,
right,
were there for the whole 6-month period.
Right. Of the devotees who were there.
But many other devotees. And Guru Kripa was in and out a lot. Bhakti True came in. He didn't come to London. He didn't come to some of the trips, but he was there a lot.
Yeah.
Bhavananda came quite a bit. Jaipataka came. A lot of them were there, in and out. But consistently, part of the party, it's only Pradumna and myself that still live, right? And Pradumna was not physically involved with Prabhupada. He was, Panditji, he was the assistant for Prabhupada's translating. Prabhupada had substantially stopped translating, but in Vrindavan, it came a point where he had to say it to me. There's this story about the missing tapes. We weren't recording anything. Prabhupada wasn't talking. And the few things he said, you never could predict that he was going to say something, and he would just say a sentence. And then he wouldn't talk again. The tape recorder wasn't even in the room. Point proven, or proving the point, is when he decided to start translating again near the end, he turned to me. He said, get the tape recorder and get Pradumna. And I did. I was in the other room. I brought it in, and Pradumna, and he started assisting Prabhupada, and they started translating
Brahma Vimohan Lila.
Brahma Vimohan Lila.
Right.
He had stopped partly in that, and then he picked up and continued.
So those who say there's missing tapes, they don't know that there were no tapes.
If there were, I would have been involved, because I was, well, in the Mayapur Samadhi, the original Samadhi, there's some dioramas of the devotees holding the tape recorder.
Yeah.
Take a careful look at that. Anika Dundubi modeled that on me, because he was there. He saw me doing it.
Oh.
I also, there's no photos of that.
Right.
But he had saw me doing it. So he modeled that diorama on me.
Right.
I'm not saying I was the one doing it. I mean, I would say Jayadvaita probably did it a lot. Tamal did it a lot. Because they were enthusiastic about, that whole thing, and they were very much involved.
Yeah.
So now we're in October. Prabhupada says to me in early October, he's lying there and he said, when my father was like this, he refused food until he expired. He said, I will also do this. So I was now on notice. That would be what he was planning to do.
Yeah.
He wasn't, under the mercy of others. He was taking a decision. He was making a decision.
Yeah.
So in October, he started refusing food. Now remember, even up for months before this, it wasn't he was drinking milk or eating food. We used a tablespoon, and he would sip a little water or a little milk with Horlicks.
That was what he...
That's it. That's all he could take. It was just really just wetting the mouth and a little bit. Maybe he could take 2 or 3 spoons of milk in his good days. And now he's refusing to take any. At the same time, the room was 24 hours filled with devotees. Not devotees afraid of Tamal. There were some pretty diverse characters, and they were really, had their own, were confident, and they had everybody respected each other, and everyone had differences with each other. We were people.
Yeah.
And but the room was now full. There was no time where there was nobody there from about mid-October till the end. To the point where I felt out of place because the intimacy was gone now. I used to be alone with Prabhupada all the time. And Upendra, but it was almost alone. It was just Upendra, and we were working together, and Tamal coming in and out, managing all the letters and the travel and a lot of things. But
you're saying by October that was no longer the case. Now
all the intimacy was gone. It was packed.
Yeah.
24 hours. Not like at night we said, okay, everybody go. It was devoted because now we thought Prabhupada could go any minute.
Yeah.
And there were some senior devotees who were taking care of Prabhupada's body as I had used to do. So I was kind of shunted to the back, and they were the big guns in those days. Certain things we learned later we didn't know then.
Right.
So I didn't,
So who started taking care of Srila Prabhupada like you were?
Well, of course, Bhakti True,
right.
Bhavananda, and even Sadadanya. That's just truthfully what happened.
Right. You were going to say something?
I was just going to say, you were sort of hinting at it before, but maybe this is as good a time as any, and I almost hate to spoil the mood, but
I was going to say
you were sort of hinting at where I thought you were going was hinting at some, at the accusations around the kind of poison conspiracy theory and how the reality just, doesn't mesh with that, right? So one of the ways the reality doesn't mesh with it is there were devotees always around.
There was no privacy.
There was no privacy. And and again, to your point, and it's maybe worth reiterating, this is not, a small group of devotees who are cowering in fear of TKG, the evil conspirator or something, right? This is, as you were saying, right?
Ask any of them, they would all laugh at you. We were afraid of TKG, really? Ask Guru Kripa. You were afraid of TKG? Like, really?
and none of just to make it crystal clear, right? None of the devotees who were actually there subscribe to.
Good point.
Or in any way support.
You cannot find a single devotee who was there.
Yeah.
Sorry, there is one. That's Sannyasi. I think he was there, but he was not involved. Sorry. There may be one.
We don't. Better maybe if we don't take the name.
That was in the room.
But
I think I know who you're talking about.
Does he subscribe to poison?
I think so.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Is that who you were talking about?
No.
I can bleep out the names.
Anyway, let's not even worry about the names. But
I'm interested to know the name.
But to that point, though, this is not like
Jai Doida was there.
Yeah.
Brahmananda was there. Guru Kripa was there. Koladri, Yadubar.
Wow.
Bardraj. It just goes on and on.
Yeah.
There were 30, 40 diverse devotees.
Right.
None of them had any benefit or fear of Tamal. Many of them had nothing to do with Tamal.
Right.
They knew him, didn't dislike him, but it wasn't a big factor in their life. So this is a little choppy. You might have to edit all this, but...
No, but I mean, just again, point being, those who were there can't subscribe to this like poison conspiracy theory because it doesn't match at all.
It doesn't match for me.
And years later still didn't subscribe to it.
It doesn't match for Pradumna. I saw Pradumna today.
Right.
And he was there the whole time.
Yeah.
And I told him I was doing this podcast and this subject may come up. It wasn't my intention to come here and talk about this.
Right. And nor is it ours to necessarily.
I personally
I don't mind talking about it.
Yeah.
But that wasn't my purpose.
Yeah.
I just wanted to talk about the glories of Prabhupada's departure. Just tell some truths. But I saw Pradumna today at Bhakti Center. And I mentioned that. And he said, I get these crazy people writing me about this poison thing. He said, how can they think like that? That was Pradumna.
Right.
So he said
to me, who was there? Yeah.
He was there.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Oh,
1 second. Can I, Jai Maharaj also, if we want to say that anecdote very quickly.
I mean, just very quickly, I'll just share an anecdote that, someone, because as you know, we've been, recently exploring that issue, and we had Srila Prabhu come on the podcast. To make a long story short, someone wrote to us who's clearly, a proponent of this conspiracy theory. And one of the things that they wrote to us was that, even Devotee Swami recently sat down with, XYZ person, and after hearing the whole case, broke down in tears and, basically accepted that this is what happened. So, knowing Devotee Maharaj and we had him on the podcast. We don't always necessarily agree with everything either, but we have a nice, cordial, respectful relationship. We reached out to Maharaj just being like, we just heard this thing. It's a little disturbing. Like, can you set the record straight? And, I think within an hour or something?
I have heard.
He wrote back. He set the record 100% straight, complete, just fake news, misinformation.
So they're lying.
They're totally lying.
It's not my purpose at the moment to get in a fight with people that I don't think are worthy of a fight, but
exactly
for the world record,
I
have listened to a few of their podcasts, and I can show you 4 or 5 points that I know they're lying.
Right.
Not just mistaken, they're lying.
No, they're not mistaken.
Yeah.
They're actually lying.
Yeah.
And I can show you how they know that they're lying.
Yeah.
Right? So once I find somebody like that, then I just don't continue talking to them. You know, it's
Right.
just something to
Can
talk
I ask
about.
you personally, how, with all the details that you know, being there, other devotees you know that were there, how do you think? I mean, you did mention like it's not worth a fight to talk about, but like for the rest of the devotees' sake, how do you process that someone would think this? And like if someone came to you, be like, Prabhu, I saw that podcast, and I believe, what would you say to them?
So recently, one of the devotees who are thinking like that, tried to explain how this was glorious by citing Jesus Christ. I happen to know a good bit about early Christianity, which I would say probably 99% of devotees are unaware of. I was studying to be a priest for a short time, and I really delved into Christianity, and I continue to read them. It's very interesting, the parallels. So actually, there's no evidence convincingly that Jesus even died on the cross, and Prabhupada rejected it. I have a quote. I just sent it to you today. Prabhupada said he didn't believe that Jesus died on the cross because you could not kill a Vaishnava like that. Prabhupada's words, right? Anyway, the conspiracy that Judas Iscariot took 30 gold coins to turn Jesus in and so he could be killed. He betrayed Jesus. None of Jesus's apostles said that. There's no historical evidence that it happened. And it was written by Luke, the first four of the main Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. None of them probably, maybe Mark, saw Jesus, but none of the others saw Jesus. They all had rejected the early disciples' version. And the idea that Judas had betrayed Jesus came from Luke. He explained it. Then John wrote subsequently in a completely different story. And there's no historical evidence that it happened at all, as well as the virgin birth, the three wise men, and especially redemption theology. Bhaktivedanta Thakur directly rejected redemption theology is that Jesus died for your sins.
Right.
Now you take that away from modern day Christianity, you got nothing left.
Right.
Don't kill somebody and don't chase your neighbor's wife and don't steal. I mean,
that's become like the kind of
atheists
essential.
will tell you that. That's just civility, right?
Yeah.
You don't need a religion to figure that out.
Yeah.
So that's all they have today because Paul stole it from that. It's Pauline Christianity. Jesus was a Vaishnava. He was an inspired Bhakta. He inspired Bhakti. Love the Lord thy God with thy whole heart and thy whole soul. That's his real message, right? And Bhaktivedanta said about this redemption theology that, we had to have a human sacrifice because God was angry because of Adam and Eve. And Bhaktivedanta explains that, and he says, no intelligent man can make any sense of this. And you remember, Prabhupada also endorsed Jesus as, he said, even Son of God. He even said, okay, fine, Son of God, but he endorsed him as a Vaishnava. Yeah. But he hated the cross. It was one time he was traveling and he was staying in a room and there was a cross and he told devotee, take it down. Accepted Jesus as a Vaishnava.
They have killed their guru.
Rejected redemption theology.
So this is fascinating, super fascinating, but also just bringing it back to, this is really significant to this whole poison theory thing, because if I understand correctly, the way that the conspiracy theorists who are alleging that Prabhupada was poisoned, the way that they tried to argue that how could this happen, is that they try to draw this parallel and say, similar to this redemption theology, that Prabhupada, allowed himself to be sacrificed, and that somehow but this is not our Vaishnava theology at all.
And Prabhupada rejected it, and Bhaktivedanta Thakur rejected it. Redemption theology.
Yeah.
So let me ask a simple few questions. If they're so sincere, why have they never interviewed me? Never. Not even a phone call.
Right. You'd be a very, very valuable eyewitness for, right?
Of course, the GBC hardly did either. They had never talked to me.
Right.
But I mean, listen, let me just say this. I'm not a defender of the GBC. My life has been seriously harmed by the uncaring mismanagement of the GBC, my children and myself. I don't take salt from them. I don't want any rewards from them. Amongst the GBC, some individuals are my dearest friends who I have great love and respect for. But as managers, I don't think they could get a job running a shoe store, frankly. I mean, their management is really bad. And they've harmed a lot of people. And they made some incredible blunders. And Tamal included, made some really bad moves, especially the Acharya era. I'm not trying to deny that. I live that reality. I'm out of the institution.
Right. You're not an institutional
And
apologist.
I wish them well, but please stay away from me because you've hurt me enough. I don't need any more hurt in this life, right? So I'm not here as an apologist for the GBC. I'm here to speak my truth. Take it or leave it. I don't care. I'm out of here in a couple more years. I'll be with Prabhupada again, I hope. I'm just going to keep trucking on. But I'm not here as an apologist. I don't want anything. I know I'm going to get abused for this. People will now describe all my faults and all the things how I failed and how bad I am and how I must be trying to do something mischievous. And they're going to do all that. They're going to go after me. And it's going to hurt also. I mean, I have a heart. I feel things.
Yeah.
I expect it. But I have to speak my truth. This is what I saw. Why did they not interview me? If they're so sincere, they openly, I heard them saying, send us your letters, send us what you think. I mean, that's a classic, clickbait. Get your audience tied into you,
Yeah.
What do you think? It's like, oh yeah, let's all chit-chat it up on the internet. How about truth? Let's not go the way of the Christian church. Let's go Prabhupada's way. And Prabhupada loved his devotees. And what does it say long-term about Prabhupada if he could be poisoned? Number one, it could say that Krishna didn't protect him. Number two, it could mean that he was a failure because he couldn't even convert his most senior, long-spanned, devotees.
Yeah, this is,
right?
Oh my gosh, exactly.
Or worse, he's a fool.
Yeah, totally
Suicidal.
hoodwinked by,
And that's why they're going to redemption theology. They're saying there's some glorious, mysterious reason.
Yeah.
Because they know that's what these are the other results of it. And he won't be glorious.
So somehow they have to
They have come up with this. And redemption theology is a farce from the beginning. It's not even true of Jesus. He never talked of it.
Yeah.
When Jesus, if he died on the cross, Prabhupada doesn't accept that. But Paul came along and never met Jesus and rejected all of Jesus's. And he says, Paul writes that I did not get my gospel from them. Jesus came to me in my dreams. And it's my gospel. The whole Christianity today is based on Paul of Tarsus. And Paul never saw Jesus. That's like Jim Jones saying, hey, let's all drink Kool-Aid. Maybe you're right, but how do I know? I don't know Paul. He just pops up and says, Jesus is talking in my dreams. That's what Jim Jones said. Let's all move to Ghana and drink poison Kool-Aid. Because God told me that's what we should do. It's that crazy.
So going back to this, you're not here as an apologist, but you do have an interest in setting the record straight.
I say it, I'm here to speak the truth.
Yeah.
Because I know I have to face Prabhupada someday.
Yeah.
And I know he's going to say, why were you a coward? Why didn't you speak? I had you there for that reason. You witnessed it. I told you my death must be glorious. Why didn't you do it? I have to do it.
Wow.
Was Prabhupada's death glorious?
There's nothing but glory there. There's nothing but beauty. There's nothing but a magnificent soul. And he left for his own reasons and for Krishna's reasons. It was time. And things happened. Things fell apart. But that's what happened after Mahaprabhu left.
Yeah.
Bhaktisiddhanta.
Yeah.
It's history. Not just in this line of Vaishnava, is it?
Everywhere.
Well, I was even thinking. I mean, I know it's not the parallels are not exact, but the famous Madhavendra Puri's departure and how Ishvara Puri is serving him. I think that the Chaitanya Charitamrita even specifies, uses this language of like cleaning, like tending to his needs and cleaning his stool and urine.
Yeah.
And who is it? Ramachandra Puri? Ramachandra Puri, also his disciple, Madhavendra Puri's disciple, but he can't appreciate it. He can't see it. And he becomes this, chronic. Well, he criticizes his own guru in his last days. He doesn't understand.
Rejects him.
Madhavendra Puri rejects him. I know there's other stuff going on there theologically, but this idea that, I mean, it's even specified that the kind of just basic level bodily care that Ishvara Puri was giving to Madhavendra Puri while maintaining that respect, that dignity. And Ramachandra Puri can't understand it. He can't understand even the mood of the Vaishnav. And I mean, with due respect, I can't help but see a parallel in like these, some of these devotees who are trying to present this,
There's no parallel for me. I'm a very degraded soul. But I can say this, that whatever I did learn about Krishna, actually learn in my heart, came from cleaning the stools of my spiritual master, washing his body and caring for him physically. The books, didn't penetrate half as deep. Yeah. It's just my heart opening and accepting that gratefully and joyfully. Having that opportunity to do that.
Wow.
It's not something that people normally talk like in public venues, but there you have it. So be it. In this world, no good deed goes unpunished. And I know I'll be punished for all this, but I have to speak. I have to say the truth.
I think especially as we move farther in time from Prabhupada, right? I mean, even for us, this is wonderful, but it's so theoretical, right?
Yeah.
And it's just going to be more and more like as we go generation and generation farther from Prabhupada. And
that's why I've quoted the Christian history, because it was just 30 years later.
It's a totally different picture.
Jesus' teachings were lost, and they'd gone off on a whole other tangent.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that we're, and we speak about this sometimes, even here on the pod, one of the things that I think we're concerned about is as we move farther, you have this sort of this other picture of Prabhupada, but you lose the like what we were talking about earlier, the real dynamic, even human side. And I mean, I think it's really important to hear from devotees like yourself and to hear from your experiences, and hearing those very real, intimate moments doesn't diminish Prabhupada in any way. It actually is all to his glory.
Right. Yeah, there's nothing but glory there. And Prabhupada did instill Krishna consciousness in all his devotees, even the ones that engaged in mischief later. They're all going back to Godhead. Maybe they have got more lessons to learn. Maybe they'll have to get a good spanking, no doubt, including me for sure. But, that's what Krishna teaches us, that even if they perform, Prabhupada uses the word abominable acts in his translation, they're still glorious. So we need to have that love. And what those devotees who take me as an elder and that I guide, mostly that's in India, Hare Krishna, to Raghava Pandit, Abhishek, Abhinash, Prabhupada, your wives, all the wives, all the Prabhus there. I teach them very carefully that you must love all the devotees and not close your eyes to their mistakes. Bhaktivedanta Thakur tells us there are 3 types of auspicious criticism. One is to help correct the devotee who's misguided. That's auspicious. Number 2 is to correct or help someone who may be misguided by them. So they don't. And Number 3 is to correct yourself so that you're not misguided by them. So we're critical that someone's not doing what should be done according to Shastra, Guru and Shastra, right? Yeah. But we're not trying to destroy them. Rather, we're trying to help the truth remain clear to everyone. Yeah. So we should not be blind or fools, but at the same time, we should not have an agenda to destroy someone. Be very careful. This is the elephant offense. And if you want to, amanina manadena, you will not have the name dance on your tongue. He will not dance on your tongue. He will not come there if there's cruelness in your heart. And what is Krishna's, that poster of the blind devotee? Surdas. He's playing the Veena string instrument and singing bhajans. He's glorifying Krishna, but he's blind. He can't see that little boy Krishna is sitting there listening, enjoying. Every one of us should think like that. Krishna's hearing you.
Krishna's hearing me.
And what is he? Maybe he's thinking, if his heart is so harsh that he can't love a Vaishnava, or even an aspiring Vaishnava, or even a pious soul, how is he going to treat me? Krishna needs a tender, gentle, loving environment. He's not going to come there. Be very careful. I beg you. This is so important. And doesn't mean be a fool. But be careful, because the mind is wicked. And it loves to be, to condemn. So that's the easiest thing. It doesn't take a lot of brains to condemn. It takes a lot of wisdom to see the milk in the mud. That's called Paramahamsa. Right? So, look, I'm the first one to talk about the zonal acharya system and all the mischief that happened. The day Prabhupada left, there's no godbrother that can claim this. The day Prabhupada left, I turned to Shruti Rupa after we'd gone through the initial emotions, although we were prepared because it's been a long time coming. I said to Shruti Rupa that day, now we will leave ISKCON. And she said, why? And I said, because I know my godbrothers, and they're going to make a mess. And I said, and you know me, I have a big mouth. I won't keep quiet. And it's going to be like this, because I'm not going to be put down by anybody, I'm an arrogant idiot, So I said, it's just no point, because they're not going to listen to me. And who else had that vision? Pradumna. And he was, he was exiled for daring to challenge the zonal acharya system. I didn't know exactly what they're going to carve up and how, but I sensed that it wasn't going to be pretty. And I left. We went 4 or 5 devotee families. I started my business. We started having babies, and we had a little Gurukula. We had a Sunday program. Jamuna came and lived with us, Jamuna and Dina Tarine, and we had a lovely time for years. Vichitavirya came from England. We had lovely devotees. And we just stayed away during it. I didn't, come and recommend you should go get initiated by, Guruji or this or that. I didn't get involved in any of it. I didn't know where it was wrong, why it was wrong, but I knew it was wrong. And I stayed away. And basically it was elitism. I'm as harsh a critic as you can find of it. That hasn't become bitter. I'm not bitter. But it was wrong. It was really wrong. And it offended and destroyed so many God brothers and God sisters. They pushed us out by not giving us service. They took the service. They took the inheritance in a group of elites. And then the 50-man committee came along and was complaining. So they opened up their wagons and let a few of the big talkers in and closed ranks again and created just a bigger group of elites and kept us out. So that was a crime, major crime. And Tamal was not the leader of it, but he was one of the leaders of it. And I'm saying this about one of my dear friends.
Yeah.
And he'll suffer for that, but he's not condemned to hell. He is Prabhupada's loyal devotee. But yeah, he did a wrong thing. But it takes a little more wisdom to be a Paramahamsa. You have to see the good, you have to see the bad, you have to see what is the good, what is the bad.
We were also talking earlier about shades of gray, right?
It's not, the world's not black and white.
Yeah.
Reality is not black and white. How did Prabhupada say, the story of Ananta Vasudeva, it was Srila Sridhar Swami who thought he should be the next Acharya. He was so important in Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's preaching.
Yeah.
He practically ghost wrote many things that were under the name of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. That was, by the way, common, that a disciple would give credit to his guru for things that he had written. It wasn't like he was
right. There was no
duplicity. He wasn't trying to hone in on,
or
Bhaktisiddhanta trying to make us. That was normal.
Yeah.
And so he was such a prominent person that was Sridhar Swami's first reaction, that we need an Acharya to keep the thing going. And then nobody fell down like Ananta Vasudeva. I mean, I don't think we have. I don't know. Maybe we have a few that come close that had such, terrible fall downs. But Ananta Vasudeva really fell down. By the way, that's why Sridhar Swami then he felt very bad that whole thing had happened, because he had endorsed the system, and then he went the other way and said, "I don't believe an institution not working," But when Prabhupada was told that Ananta Vasudeva has died, they asked what will happen to him. Prabhupada said he will go back to Godhead. This is Vaishnavism. Amanina manadena. If we don't learn to be humble, the Lord will never dance on our tongue.
We need to learn that with our Utrecht friends.
Yeah.
It's hard, though.
It's hard. But I think it also, we've talked about this before, too. When you try to understand where people are coming from emotionally.
Yes.
So much of it is just
emotion.
Being deeply hurt and being rightfully heartbroken and
yes, many people were hurt by the leadership of ISKCON.
Yes.
And Tamal was part of that too.
Yeah.
But he wasn't the Rasputin mastermind or the Adolf Hitler controlling it all. That's just not true history. I'm sorry. It's, if you want to figure out what went wrong, look for the truth and, fine. But don't make up stories because it's easy and,
it's easy, yeah, exactly.
It puts it all in a nice black and white package.
Yeah.
And everybody can grab it, and you can go on podcasts and wave your hand in the air like it has nothing to do with what you're saying. Your hand's just waving around like this, Somebody do that? Right? Is it a good technique? I don't know. It has nothing to do with what I'm saying, but it's waving around like, look at me, look at me. Sorry. It's just, I'm trying to help devotees to see, not that things were not wrong, but things are not black and white. Yeah. And this did not happen. It is impossible. It is ridiculous. Even if there is some poison, I have poison. This is the age of toxicity. We all have toxicity. Even if there's some there, right? Jumping to a conclusion of murder.
Yeah. It's a big jump.
That's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to prove the motives, first of all, which is really a tough one here. I was part of arguing with Prabhupada about not going on. I was against the Parikram.
I wanted to ask you about that.
The Govardhan
Parikram debate.
I was against it. And because I was his nurse, I knew his bodily condition. Right. I knew it was a death sentence. He couldn't hardly be turned on his side without pain and trauma. But to speak of, in those days, it was Bullock Cart and Bad Road, Kutcha Road. And who was right next to me arguing with Prabhupada? TKG. If he wanted Prabhupada gone, all he had to say was, Srila Prabhupada, we'll follow your Because Prabhupada was very insistent for a while.
Yeah.
It was very
Yeah,
easy.
that would have been the so-called golden opportunity. It would
Really
have just
easy.
been like,
Just
Prabhupada, yes, let's
aside.
take you on parikram, and
Stand aside. It'll be glorious, Prabhupada. We'll be right there with you. We'll sing kirtan. Why was TKG right next to me? Arguing vociferous. Please don't. He was begging also, please don't go, Prabhupada, please. Right?
yeah.
And then this came up again later, and others were involved in the discussion, and some were in favor, some were against. Tamal was always against.
And if I understand correctly, and please, share your memories of this, to his dear godbrother and friend, Akinchana Krishna Das Babaji, Srila Prabhupada, from what I remember, said something to the effect of,
I was
Babaji,
there.
see how they
there.
love me. You were there. Could you share a little bit about that?
So I was, again, I hate to keep saying this, it happens to be true. I was sitting on the bed that's there now in the living room.
Yeah.
Prabhupada's, and I was dealing with Prabhupada, and mostly rubbing and comforting him. Krishna Das Babaji was sitting near Prabhupada's feet on the bed. Narayan Maharaj was sitting on the floor because he was junior, but he was there. Prabhupada had affection for him, for sure. Yeah. It was, somebody Prabhupada had affection for. And of course, he was very learned. So they had nice conversations at times. I'm not particularly a follower of Narayan Maharaj, but I don't want to distort history.
Yeah.
It just happens to be true.
Yeah, right.
And Babaji Maharaj was sitting at Prabhupada's feet. And then he said, just see how my devotees love me. We were begging him, not to go on the parikram. And Prabhupada was not boasting, but he was pointing out how much they love me.
Mm.
Okay.
That's how Prabhupada was taking it. That's how
Prabhupada was aware that we were poisoning him, and he was talking like this. How do you connect those dots?
Yeah, that wouldn't make any sense at all, right?
How do you connect those dots? Was he afraid of us?
Was he afraid? Was he lying? Was he? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
Did he have some? This isn't how Prabhupada talked.
Right.
He didn't do this.
Yeah.
He was.
Yeah.
Right straight down the line.
Yeah.
Right in your face. Right?
Yeah.
Every single thing he said and wrote, he was boom, right in your face. He didn't talk like this. Indirect, obscure, secret. That's ridiculous. He wasn't afraid of us. He wasn't afraid of dying. He wasn't afraid of anything. He had Krishna protecting him. He was fearless. Vaichar Naravinda was his name.
Right.
Yeah.
He was fearless. So he told that to Krishnadas Babaji. And then I was sitting there, and then he started crying, Prabhupada, and he said, I have offended my godbrothers. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. And then Babaji Maharaj was, really moved by that. And he started rubbing like extra hard Prabhupada's, the shin area, the leg, lower half of the leg. And he started like he was getting carried away. And it was rubbing. He was saying, no, Swami Maharaj. You were preaching. You had to speak strong. And Prabhupada said, no, please forgive me. I've spoken harshly of Vaishnavas. But this was quite another amazing rasa to see, that Prabhupada now was regretting that, even though and Babaji Maharaj was telling the truth, he had to speak strong to, pull us out of every kind of detour that we tried to make, Yeah.
But what I love about that story and so many others that, memories that you're sharing is like, is all true. Prabhupada was actually feeling emotions and expressing emotions.
Again.
Babaji Maharaj was actually telling the truth and responding.
Krishna was afraid of Mother Yasoda with the stick. He wasn't pretending.
It wasn't pretending.
Afraid.
It was, and it's simultaneously teaching all of us and teaching, I imagine, especially for you all in the room, what an education you're getting on Vaishnava relationships, right? But it's real. But Prabhupada's actually going through this range of emotions, actually feeling appreciation and gratitude, actually feeling
what we saw
sadness.
was something that's only a rumor in this world. It's called love.
Right.
Yeah. You actually see it. You're actually witness to. Yeah.
Prabhu, you've been in ISKCON since
55 years I've been connected to Prabhupada.
Yeah.
I don't know if the legal ISKCON accepts me as in ISKCON.
I accept you as an ISKCON.
Well,
And
there is
you're,
that,
and you're the number one Hare Krishna
there is
podcast.
that,
So
the definition
I
that
think you're
Prabhupada
ISKCON.
gave. I think it was a letter to Madhavisa. That
Yeah.
said, where are you following the Guru? And
Yeah.
I follow my vows and I preach, and that's my life. I live extremely simply. I live as a Vanaprastha.
Right.
And I do. There were times when I didn't follow all my vows in my lifetime, but I do, and I have for some time now. And I fully preach, and that's all I do. And again, I have nothing to gain. I'm not an apologist for the GBC. I'm quite critical of them. I love many of them. And I'm sure, there are many great souls there, but they're not good managers, and they've made a mess of a lot of people's lives. So I'm not here to protect them.
Sure. Along the same lines, as being in ISKCON for so long, or as a devotee of Srila Prabhupada, what can you say to the current members of ISKCON? What advice do you have, and what do you see? What is your opinion of what you're seeing in ISKCON today, as someone who's seen it since 1969?
There's a couple of things I say consistently to the next younger devotees.
Yeah.
One is that always remember that the grandfather loves, he has this, when he's a father, he can't imagine where that love comes from in his heart for his children. It's an amazing thing to each new father and new mother.
Yes.
Where I didn't know I had this love in me. But then when the grandchildren come, there's a whole nother level that comes, right? So don't think that Prabhupada wasn't thinking of you and isn't thinking of you. Prabhupada held two jobs. I give this little allegory. During the day, he traveled, he preached, he managed, he gave darshan. And at night, he took his second job for you. He wrote what was in his heart, the Bhaktivedanta purports. He put the spirit of himself in those purports. And whatever I know of him, I actually know mostly from that. I saw so many, I felt so many things, but it was clarified by reading how his love for Krishna is manifested in his words. So he's there. And I see great hope for the future of the movement, despite so many things that have happened and seen, and tragedies have happened in my life, being connected to others that are in the movement. And surely I'll do proper punishment for my own sinful past of many generations, many lifetimes. But I see so many great souls coming forward now. I mean, really great. And I tell the devotees often when I speak that, we were the rough, street guys, street fighters. We were put on the front line. We took the bullets so that the gentle souls that are coming up now could, we could clear the path a little bit so they can move forward without having to go through what we went through. And yes, that makes more than me. It makes those who came before me and fought alongside me real heroes. But the next generation has even more hope to go further and further ahead, So I think there's great hope for the future. And I think but it depends on developing love in your heart. And that's love for everyone who's trying to serve Krishna, every good soul. And to develop that humility, to be a Paramahamsa, to be able to find the milk within the mud.
Right.
If you don't do that, you're not going to make it. There's no shortcut and there's no roundabout way. You've got to go right through the center. Manina, manadena. You've got to give love and respect to all living entities. And then the Lord, then kirtaniya sada hari. That's the only way through. If you want the Lord to, See, what does it mean? Permanently chanting, constantly chanting? That only happens when you actually taste the chanting. Then you can't stop. It's just, you become mad after it.
Yeah.
And that only happens when you have, your heart has been cleansed of envy. And again, I try to clarify, it doesn't mean you're not constructively critical, but you have to eliminate the envy. You're not trying to hurt someone. You're not trying to destroy, because as soon as you have that mood, you're going to start making up things to support your motive. And then it's a slippery slope all the way down. And you'll find yourself completely angry, discouraged. You know, it's not a good plan.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that.
I don't know how we're doing for time, but
Hour 30. I think we can end.
we can probably start wrapping up. I'm curious, and by all means, if you would rather pass, you can pass. You can, but especially thinking about the last days and even the last day, literally, Srila Prabhupada's disappearance. What do you recall of the last words Prabhupada spoke to you? Or
The last words Prabhupada said to me, "Be blessed."
say it again.
As I was saying goodbye to Prabhupada, he turned to me and he said, "Be blessed."
Be blessed. Wow. So the very last words he spoke to you were that blessing, be blessed.
Wow.
So beautiful.
I think it's a good place to end. Do you have anything else, Prabhu? We're at like what, almost 11 p.m. right now.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Abhirama Prabhu through the ringer.
Yeah.
It's like a marathon.
We
But
started at like
This
6:30.
was easy peasy.
we didn't. Yeah, I mean, you referenced it, but also wanted to acknowledge you. I mean, amazing piece of history. You have the diary, the journal.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm under a lot of pressure to write, both that I should do it, and like Shiva Maharaj, who I love deeply and have great respect for. I don't actually agree with everything, but doesn't change the fact that I'm just absolutely in awe of him, right? And he's very loving to me. I'm afraid to take his calls because he's always harassing me. Have you written yet? Did you start writing it? What do you? It's like I see him on the phone. I'm not home, Maharaj.
And he's referring specifically to the
because all of what I know, he wants me to write. And he gets pretty heavy on me. So again, I have to do it one of these days.
Yeah, please do it.
very selfishly.
So
Also.
now
we hope you do.
The selfishness on my part of doing this podcast is at least for a couple of months. I can say,
Send him the link. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well,
Wow.
Jose, thank
I
you so
feel
much.
tangibly like Srila Prabhupada's presence in my mind, and to get even just a small, more understanding of him, not just the philosophical, but actually as a person, as a divine person. It comes out. Thank you, Prabhu, for doing this.
Yeah,
Appreciate
absolutely.
that. We're indebted to you.
I opened myself up in this one too. I'm going to be pummeled for this for a long, probably into posterity. But what else can I do? I can't make up a story.
I don't know about the pummeling. If there is pummeling, may it be few and far between. But I think much more than that, you've really given a gift to so many.
Yeah.
And I think you're gonna get a lot of
in hopes of that
Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis with a lot of gratitude offering you.
Totally. Hare Krishna, thank you for watching. If you've watched this far, this is part 2 of Abhirama Prabhu's amazing recounting of the disappearance pastimes of His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. If you like this podcast, please like it, please share it, subscribe to my channel, and thank you. Have a good night. Hare Krishna. It's 11 p.m. here. Now we're off the record.
I don't know if I can trust you now.
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.